Welcome to Let's Talk Games. My name is Daniel. I'll be your host this week. Alongside me, I have Chunt and Jamie. Morning, boys, or evening, Jamie.
Yo, yeah, it'd be weird to be drinking bourbon at your time of the morning, but not at 10:57.
I don't know. I'm going to try it one of these days. Maybe next week if this PlayStation thing goes all well. But no, this week is going to be our. It's a next gen type episode. We're thinking in the future. We're predicting. We're speculating. Everything's happening. How's your week been, boys? Good.
Average.
Too long, even though it's the same space of time every week. But it was too long this week.
Did we play any games this week of mention? Jamie, I think you might want to start this one because I think Chun and I might be a bit short.
We obviously spoke about this. You Chunt, for reference, have played Animal Crossing, and Dan, you've played 2K, so nothing out of the ordinary. I got midway through the week, and I was like, right, I need to play something. So I actually got stuck into the Warlords of New York expansion for Division 2.
Okay.
It's more Division. It's fun. The gameplay loop, I forgot how much I enjoyed it, so it was nice to kind of get back into that. And then given the fact that new Destiny stuff is on the horizon, I was like, I'll go back in and check what's gone on with these weapon quests for the season and see if I actually want to do them and get them before they disappear. Turns out I don't. I did one milestone and I was like, I'm not spending hours and hours doing this. I'll just I'm out. So yeah, I went back to the Division for a bit, and then yesterday I played some Minecraft Dungeons. Man, do I have thoughts there.
Sweet.
That game is not good. That is not what I want from it. I'm not its target audience. I wish I was, because everybody can do with a good ARPG with decent loot mechanics, and I'm not a Minecraft fan to start with, but yeah, it's poorly executed and borderline insulting, even on its most difficulty, as to what it considers difficult. But then again, you do have to keep winding it back and go, look, I am not your target audience, so I doubt I'll be going
it's
back.
like for 5-year-olds or 8-year-olds or something.
That's the thing. I think it's aimed at people who've never played a game like that before, and we're 3 Diablos deep by this point. I mean, come on, like I've played these games. So bit underwhelming. But again, I think it's just sometimes you do realize you just go, wait, I'm not the audience for this. As much as I'd like to have been, I'm not. So that was a bit of a letdown. But yeah, Warlords of New York for Division. So far, so solid. I'm about 30% through of that, so you get 5. It's basically, think of like the Nemesis system. You've got to track down these 5 kernels that are working throughout New York. You actually go back to New York where the first division was set, take out number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they'll give you the intel to get the big guy that you want to take out for the expansion. So I've taken the first one out, and I'm halfway through discovering the whereabouts of the second. So yeah, keen to finish that off. But yeah, 2 different things this week in Minecraft Dungeons and Division, and the fact that I did actually play Destiny.
The Minecraft Dungeons, was that only coming to PC, or was that
Xbox
everywhere?
And PC.
It's everywhere. It's out on Switch and it's on PlayStation.
Okay.
It's on Game Pass for PC and for Xbox. So yeah, I played different things.
Can any updates you want to give on your Animal Crossing lifestyle?
My little cat girlfriend's been a bit quiet. I've got like 680,000 bells.
You're fighting.
Yeah, we're kind of just not talking at the moment, and yeah, my best friend almost thought about leaving the island, so I had to talk him out of that. Been a pretty emotional week, so I'm just kind of keeping to myself.
Well, whatever happens. It's you can't predict these things.
Yeah,
we're there for you, Chunt. Yeah. But we're 2K was the only thing I got to play last week. However, I did something new in 2K, which was last night. I played online against other people. So I thought you boys would be real proud of me. I went online. I dusted off the old internet connection.
That's huge.
Yeah. And then I just went on a 6-game winning streak, and I was like, these guys are shit. And then I was like, it's 1:30. I should go to bed. So I went to bed.
Yeah, you got the thirst. You started realizing you were good online and was like, I'm going to carry on playing this. It gives me nice tingly feelings in my tummy.
Yeah.
That's great.
Some of them, some playing against some of them were really funny because they would just shoot threes all the time. And I'm like, that's not how you win this game, boys. Anyway, let's move on to our first topic. And this is kind of a fresh topic because pretty much when I went to bed, this story broke. And Jamie, you posted it in our chat this morning. PlayStation 5 event is happening next week. 6 a.m. our time, Chunt. So I don't know if you're going to get up and watch it.
What day?
I think it's Thursday.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, I'll be just getting
Thursday or Wednesday. They're kind of keeping on this consistent track, which I want to talk about in a bit. And Jamie, I'm assuming you'll watch it.
Yes. 9 p.m. my time, apparently. Although Google said 8 p.m., but I think PlayStation said 9 p.m. So, yeah, time zones.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm not sure what time zone it was, actually. That's a good point. But I just want to talk to you guys a little bit this week about what we're expecting out of this event. So the first one, do we feel that, and do you think it's a good idea if they do it? Do you think it's going to be a mixture of first, second, and third party stuff? And do you think that's a better way to go, knowing the way Microsoft's been doing it, where they've done third party stuff, then they'll do I think they're doing something with IGN during June, and then they're doing their first party stuff. So they're going to kind of bookend this PlayStation event, and PlayStation's pretty much just if they do everything, they're going to blow their wad, and then it's like good luck until November.
Yeah.
John, what do you think? Do you prefer the Xbox way, or do you prefer the PlayStation way of just doing it all at once? Or do you think that's what they're doing?
Everyone knows that I spread them for Xbox, but this time I'm going to be like, PlayStation, this is the right way to do it, and this is the way I wish Xbox was doing it this year. Like I mentioned a podcast or two ago where I had my rant about this drip-fed news cycle that's going on over months, and I hate it. I want just one big event just to enjoy for the day or the weekend, to be like, oh, look at all this awesome stuff all at once, just get it all over me, you know? And for PlayStation to come out with just like over an hour, whatever they said on the article, let's just say an hour and a half presentation of this is what PS5 is, what to look forward to, look at all this epic stuff. I'm like, yes, like that's the way to do it. You know, you've done nothing as far as your messaging so far, but if you're saving it for this, you know, I'll look past all of that. You know, yes, it's been awesome for me to be like, oh, you know, I know what the Series X is, and we've had some in-depth looks from like people and YouTubers, and you know, they've released a lot of specs and videos and games to expect, you know, over the past few months. But personally, I would have preferred if Xbox saved everything almost besides the Series X reveal, like the games particularly, if they save that for a showcase of like an hour and a half or something like that and just have a big special, yeah, that's what I would prefer. And we were talking about it the other day in the chat of like just how annoying it is, and I'm already over it because I open up YouTube and it's just multitude rows of videos of the same game coverage every day. It's something different and it's just all the same, so I end up not watching anything because it's like, well, you're all saying the same shit, you know, and it's all like so thin and there's not enough info to go out on, so it's all a waste of time. And they're only doing it because they're running YouTube channels and they need the clicks and they need the watch time, and no one knows anything, so it's all just noise, and I hate it. Whereas if you had the usual cycle where it was the yearly event, like an annual special, a big hour and a half blowout, everyone's got so much to talk about, and then you've got all these interviews after the event with the developers and the game people and stuff, giving more context and more detail that they can flesh out their opinions on, but we're not getting that. So yeah, look, roundabout way, long way to get to my answer. But yeah, I like this. What PlayStation are doing. I can't wait to see it, to see what they do. And if it ends up being a very good presentation, then I'll be one of the first to be like, yeah, good on you. And I just hope it's not a trip. I want them to do their best, and I know PlayStation they got their fans out there, and I want them to have something to cheer about. I've had months worth of it so far. So yeah. Anyway, I'm done. That's my rant.
Jamie, you in a similar boat?
I mean, yes and no. I like Chunt, and now I'm getting fed up of the drip-fed, tiny piecemeal content that we're getting from any outlet, to be perfectly honest with you. And it's grinding on me quite a bit. So the whole, like, let's do a big event and show everything there and kind of give you everything at once and then let people spend months digesting it works well for me. My problem is, I think we've been told this event's going to be around an hour long, and I don't know what they can fit in an hour. Obviously we spoke about first parties, and it's came out today as well that Sony have, I can't remember where the interview was held, but it was a case of, look, they've actually made this statement. They'd rather their developers focus on utilizing the power of PlayStation 5 than making sure that PS4 games can run on the PlayStation 5, which is a dig at Xbox and also anti-consumer. We live in an era now where, if we purchase a game in one place, we shouldn't have to buy it again when you make a remastered version of it. I fully agree with that. So what have they got coming, and where is it? So PlayStation, our event next week, I expect first party stuff. I don't think they're going to blow everything in this one event. I think it's probably going to be a case of, I don't think we see like price reveals or anything like that. I think we'll see some games and maybe PlayStation 5 games, but in terms of the way they're going to structure going forward, I think anybody that's thinking this is one big WAD drop is sorely misinformed. I think it's going to be the first of many throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think that article you're talking about was the one we spoke just before we went live, Jamie, which was that games industry biz. And I think they were basically saying that, they'd rather just start making games for PlayStation 5 rather than making sure that they work on PlayStation 4. So which is kind of what we all, well, at least I did, predict, where, they even say in this, we believe in generations, whether it's the DualSense controller, whether it's 3D audio, whether it's multiple ways that the SSD can be used. Whereas Xbox is kind of trying to bring everyone along together at the same time. PlayStation's going to be like, well, we're going to bring out the PlayStation 5 and we're going to start making things for that. So
we believe in generations. That's just a way around to say, like, yeah, we didn't bake this backwards compatibility, and so let's kind of spin it and like, yeah, no, we believe in our generations, even though everybody's asking for backwards compatibility, but whatever.
So,
cool.
So the only reason why I think this is going to be first, second, and third party games, one is by the length of it, but also the mere fact that like Call of Duty have not had an event this year, like, at all, and normally they have something in May showing off just a brief glimpse of what their next game is this year, and that they haven't, shows me that they're probably going to be at this thing. They're probably going to announce whatever the game is coming in November, or when do they normally come out? November or October?
Yeah.
And so that kind of makes me think that because Sony always has all these marketing deals with people, and they haven't had any events this year to show off those third-party marketing events. And that's what kind of makes me think it's a mixture of all of them. I'm the opposite of you, Chunt, where I love the drip feed. Like, I think the reason more for it is not really as a fan, except maybe a fan of the developers, because what we always find is when you get these smaller devs that announce their games at like an E3 normally, they all get pushed aside by whatever the big thing is that year. And doing it this way, like I know it was underwhelming for a lot of people, that Xbox third party, but like at least you get to get your game out in front of more people by doing it that way, rather than getting swallowed up by, you know, like let's be real, when Microsoft do their first party stuff and they're going to talk about Halo, like what likelihood is that Chorus game or the that twin stick shooter game that they showed, like what airplay are they going to get when they're talking about, you know, a Halo or a Horizon or whatever?
Well, they're not first party games, so that's why they wouldn't be there.
No, not at that particular event, but I'm saying like at this Sony event, like there's going to be, if they do everything, and there's going to be like a couple of small indie games that are going to show off, but no one's going to talk about them. No one's going to talk to the developers and have these interviews with those guys, you know, or if they do, it won't be until after they've talked to all the bigger games and the bigger developers.
Yeah,
that's the only reason why I like feed.
If this is going to include a console reveal as well, they're going to capitalize on their more, you know, bigger titles. You know, they're not going to rely on too much. You know, they want to have a big blowout. If this is what you know, it sounds like it's going to be like this article. You shared it with us before we started here. I haven't even had a bloody chance to read it, but just surmising of what to expect. Just by past years, you can expect the console reveal and a whole bunch of exclusives and first parties, with maybe a trickle in of some, you know, indie darlings that they usually put in there. But yeah, like you're not going to have the more obscure indie titles in a massive event like that. I think those things will probably just be state of plays, you know, announcements or reveals or that kind of thing. But I think as consumers these days, particularly in the last 2 years, we're getting a bit more savvy about finding out games or discovering games, and the studios or companies or whoever who puts them out, the marketing teams have been a bit more savvy as well on how they put out the messaging and their information feeds, where like Nintendo has their, you know, their Nindies special, you know, State of Play has their section where you've got some obscure games that you've probably never heard of, and inside Xbox is the place where they might reveal some smaller games or, you know, titles that you probably would never expect. So like this year I think is all about subversion. You know, the expectations are just flipped and you don't know what to expect, but you can only kind of rely on your previous experience and maybe thinking outside the box a little bit. So, you know, that whole old mentality of you won't see this on X presentation, I think can possibly go out the window, considering how everything's changed. So, having smaller games being wild runaway successes in recent years, I think that kind of changes the narrative too, where Sony and Xbox and stuff have to be more aware of that being a fact, that a lot of people are talking about smaller games, you know, some darling type games these days. The AAAs will always be there, but you'll have these runaway hits sometimes where everybody's playing it and it's the moment thing to talk about that week. And so, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of that coming through on the big presentations.
Well, you kind of stole my my segue. So I'll ask you, Jamie, do you think we will see the console revealed and at this event? And if so, would they do a console reveal without revealing the price?
No and no. I think no console reveal. I don't think we see the box, and I don't think we get a price, because I think they're firmly holding to that. We're going to wait for Xbox to show their hand, repricing, and I don't think they've got the box ready. I think all of the information that's coming out, that box is undergoing massive redesigns. I think there's merit to it. I know you can't obviously verify speculation and what some people are saying, but there's been too much happen, industry insider wise, where friends of developers and developers have been having these conversations saying, look, this clock speed doesn't run properly. There's throttling in the performance. I think the thing's getting a radical redesign. I'd be surprised if they're even in production yet, which if they're not in production, they can't show what it looks like. Do you know what I mean? Which is something that Chunt raised maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago now, in saying when we were talking about the consoles maybe having a lower number of units to ship for launch. The fact that Microsoft showed what that box looked like back in November, late November time last year, early December, whenever the Game Awards was, they showed it then, which means that thing has been locked down as to what it's going to look like and probably perform like for quite some time, meaning that their production cycle was probably way underway before the current global situation happened. So no, I don't think we get a price, and I actually don't think they show the box. I think you get a silhouette or something stupid like that, and I think everybody's going to be very butthurt after it, because people are going to go into this event expecting to see the box and to see the price, and I'll happily eat my own hat if we get both. I will stand and go, brilliant, I want to see a box, I want to see a price. But given Sony's current form, nah, no chance.
That's an interesting prospect. Yeah, just to see it not be what everybody thinks it's going to be. Ooh, meaty.
No, I don't think there'll be a console there either. I think Xbox are also in this position where they know it's not the end of the world if they don't sell all of their Series X's, because the whole idea is that there are going to be some people that aren't going to get the Series X because they're like, I have the X, I have the One X, and that's going to last me for another 3 years. Like, not everyone's going to upgrade all the time. So they're not trying to replace every single Xbox One console out there. They're just getting the people that are diehard that are going to go and get this thing day one, and then slowly people will phase out of whatever they have and get the new one later on. Whereas PlayStation are just trying to replace anyone that was, like me, who has an original PlayStation 4 from launch, and are ready for an upgrade. Yeah, man. But yeah, I don't think there will be, and I think they'll get away with not showing the console, just because if they really do show at least 2 or 3 games that kind of appeal to each person. So if there's like 20 games there and at least 3 appeal to you, there's enough there for you to be distracted by the fact that there's no console there. Then that's what I think they're banking on, is if they show enough games, then people won't think about the console until a later date. But I don't think we go definitely past August, but probably end of July by the time we see that thing.
So where does it get shown then? Where do they show it? Like, what event? What do you see? Where do you see them showing it?
I think that's all in flux. I think they're trying to figure out when, because they're starting to open some things up through June and July in the States. And I think they want press and stuff to go get hands-on with these machines. And they want to, book at a hotel and have everyone come there and play a whole bunch of different games and stuff. And I think they want to wait until they can do that, and then they could show off the console around that time.
I think the argument then becomes, like, even the diehard Sony fans have to admit, if they don't show the console after showing the games, it's like, well, what are you looking forward to be playing it on? Like, yeah, you've got, say for argument's sake, 10 amazing games that they showcase. What are you playing it on? You don't even know. Like, you don't know yet. Like, you can put the blind veil over the hype. Like, be excited for this and these games. They're coming out on PS5. And after that wears off, you have to think that even the dumbest of fans will be like, well, I want to know what the console looks like now. What am I looking forward to? What is the box? And, to not know that, going in. I think it's a bit dangerous to be holding off, waiting so they can get it in the hands of some reviewers or whatever to get the hype. The editorial staff on these outlets to get hands on with the game. Like I really think they need to think otherwise if that's the case. Like, well, this is different circumstances at the moment. You got to rely on your fan base, your install base, the games. Like, you got to back them, and to be holding it off potentially just to get some random people that have a blog to play the game or test it out or whatever. That's dangerous, man. You can only hold your cards for so long. And we all know, like the chat online, and even Microsoft has said a number of times that, we're pretty comfortable with our pricing. And if we need to, basically, surmising their words, basically saying we will undercut if we need to. We won't be beaten on price. So, like Jamie mentioned, there's this dance going on of like who's going to reveal the price first. But I think either way, it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I hope that they just have something like the series, the Xbox One X, when they announced that, where they had the developers on there saying this is going to be amazing, and they had the little silhouette, dark kind of outline of the console. Maybe just do something like that. Maybe like the corner of the console with the logo or something to go, yeah, this exists in some form. Just a little morsel for fans to kind of go on. I don't know, like what Jamie just said about what you expect might be happening on this thing. I'm like, yeah, that's a really good point, because traditionally you can make an educated guess about you can expect XYZ here, but this time maybe not, and the blowback could be pretty huge if expectations aren't set properly. So I don't know, messaging this week's going to be important, but yeah, I can't wait. It'll be very, very fascinating.
But all in all, like, it's just a box at the end of the day, which is why I don't really like. That doesn't faze me. The big part of it is when they show off these games, I don't think they need to learn from, say, that Inside Xbox thing where it says, game indicative of what it will run on a whatever. They need to have, especially if they show off games like Horizon or something like that. They need to have something that says running on PlayStation 5. And just
Godfall. I want to see more of Godfall, Dan.
Yeah, that'll be there.
It's the only game I actually can say I want to see more of, because obviously we don't know anything else. we know about Godfall, and I think that's coming to PC, so I'm probably going to play it there.
But so, still staying on this next gen stuff, there's also a story this week about Microsoft came out and was just mentioning about all the thousands of games that the Series X is going to have backwards compatibility with, that some games will get HDR support just native to the console. The developers don't need to do anything. Some games will also have their frame rates amped up on their own, but that one sounds wishy-washy in terms of which games will do it, but there are games that will be able to increase from 30 frames per second to 60 or 60 to 120.
Yep.
That's what I wanted to ask you guys, because we probably haven't spoken about backwards compatibility in a little while. How important is backwards compatibility to you guys? Because I know, Chunt, you last year kind of went on this because there weren't as many games you were excited about, so you went, I'm just going to go into a backlog and just go through them.
Yeah. Backwards compatibility for me is important, because I have a lot of physical Xbox and Xbox 360 games still, and picking up cheap ones on eBay or Facebook Marketplace or whatever, just games that I missed or games that I regretfully traded in, to get into this gen and stuff like that. So I know, I'm fully aware that not every disc that I have is going to be backwards compatible on the Xbox, but I still have my original 360 consoles, and about 3-5 years ago I picked up another original Xbox and started picking all these old games up again, because I hold a lot of fond memories to some of these old titles, and some that I missed because I was a lot younger then. I didn't have a lot of money to blow on every game, and so they're a lot cheaper now, more obtainable. So I can go back and experience these games that I missed or passed up, or want to revisit. So to say that it's not important, there's a lot of people that are more hardcore backwards compatible than me, that just want to have their libraries still. Like there's people that have a room like dedicated to shelves and shit with all their games on it, and they don't want to be left behind, and they want to have an option. Obviously that's not going to cover every game, but I think the more that they can solidify the future, so to speak, of their library, it's only a good thing. Like the Xbox Series X and anything going forward, it's backwards compatible, and this gen is forwards compatible with it. So they're like, yeah, we've got thousands of games that you can play. So, well, that's technically true. Like you've got basically the full Xbox One catalog that you can take forward with you, and then whatever the Xbox One can play, as in 360 and original Xbox, you've got those to come forward as well. So it's a good feather in the cap. It's a good marketing message. The headline sounds good, but yeah, if the answer is backwards compatible options important, I'd have to say yeah. Like I've got the original stuff, the original hardware hooked up out there, and I'm looking around for HDMI options for these old consoles so I can get away from the AV cables. Because I'm actively interested to go through my back catalog that I've been picking up. I've got plenty of games that I've bought for like $8 or $5 here and there that I haven't touched yet, that I've always wanted to. Real first world problem, but it's one that I would like to avoid where possible. The discs that I have, I can put them in my Xbox One X or Xbox One S or whatever you have, and I can just play the disc. And it'll either download an emulated version or whatever it is, they pull it off Xbox Live. And that alone is awesome. That you can put an original Xbox disc in your Xbox One and play that game. And then some of them are even Xbox X enhanced and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty damn cool what they've been able to do. The fact that Jade Empire looks as good as it does X enhanced is insane. As well as Crimson Skies, it looks really good. And I think it's a good thing for everybody to hold on to, not only the platform that you've been investing in for years, but just for history in general, like the whole game preservation conversation that always gets thrown around. It's a good thing to plan ahead for, because obviously it's never been something that's been considered, or whoever, no company's really been mindful of it. So it's just this generation cycle where, all right, out with the old box, out with all the old games, in come the new, like you trade them out. That's the whole reason that the trading secondhand games, that whole market exists, because of this console cycle. Everybody trades their shit in to get the new stuff. We could probably see a slowdown of that coming up, particularly digital age. Jamie, I know, is basically fully digital, and I'm pretty much there as well. So yeah, again, a long answer to come around to a simple, a question that I could have just answered very simply, but I've taken a long way around just to explain my case. But yeah, backwards compatible is a big deal, and anyone that says otherwise clearly was never interested in the first place. End of.
Jamie, do you think that there are any issues with, say, original Xbox One games or Xbox 360? If they do up the frame rate, it can change the games, not necessarily for the better, or do you think it would only improve them?
All the frames. I moved to PC for that exact reason. Trust me, more frames is better. I think there's a value of diminishing return. There's certain things that do not need to run at 120 frames a second. Anything that you are carrying a gun in, or anything you are moving through a world at quite a fast pace in, 60 is a sweet spot. It's kind of known by everyone. I know we touched on, obviously, the whole Assassin's Creed debate last week, or the week before, the 30 frames target and everything. And, you guys were kind of the ilk of, it's a more cinematic kind of open world adventure game. Like, do you need it to be 60? Trust me, play Assassin's Creed at that frame rate and then tell me otherwise, because the ability to dodge and things like that. I mean, even in I know there's a way that you can unlock the frame rate of not Dark Souls, Bloodborne on the PlayStation. I saw a Eurogamer, Digital Foundry thing about how to do that. And just the fluidity, you think something like that where you've got to be so precise with a dodge or a roll, just to get that, you're doubling the frames, right? It's a big deal. The thing is that people are going to run into with this whole thing is how many people have realistically got TVs that are set up to run 120 frames a second. I mean, it's brand new technology over HDMI. Like 4K 120 is literally only available on, I think, 3 TVs at the moment. That support will grow in the future, but who's really set up for it at launch? I think that's a piece of the technology that will come into its own later down the line. But frames are super important, man, and so is backwards compatibility. And just as Chunt said, he nailed it there. My opinion's exactly the same. I have an Xbox library of 386 games, like just from Xbox One era. So if you add my 360 stuff into that, you're pushing over 400. And if I have one box that lets me play through all of those games at my leisure because I've been digital for so long, if I can go into that library and download any of that and just play it on one machine, that's brilliant. But that it's the value proposition there is incredible because I don't have to have 6 machines plugged into my TV. I'll be interested to see what route Sony go. I had a PlayStation 3, I had a Vita, I had PlayStation 4 at numerous different times during this console generation. And now, I look through my library and I see like Persona 4 Golden there, like on the Vita. I don't have a Vita, like that became useless to me years ago. So, if I can plug a PlayStation 5 in and download even my Vita games and play them emulated on a PlayStation 5, that sounds brilliant. So I think Sony are really understating the value people do place on back compat. I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, I think it is. I think backwards compatibility is needed. I think even just for archival purposes, the ability for someone to be able to easily find like, I want to play, a game that was released in '98 on the first PlayStation or the original Xbox. I think it's super important to have that around because it's part of gaming history, and a lot of that, like a lot of the stuff from the 80s and the 70s when they were getting into this stuff is just gone. And that's a really sad thing. And I think the more these companies all work together to try and make sure it's all accessible to people, I think is better. And I do want Sony to do it. I have my reservations about how they're going to do it. To be honest, my prediction would be that they're going to work on just digital backwards compatibility to begin with, and they might work on disc-related stuff later, because I don't think they're going to go to the extent of what Xbox has done, where you can just put in your original Xbox game or your 360 game into there. I think they're going to work on digital mostly because, especially with the PlayStation 4, they'll be sharing the same store proper and have similar architecture, so they'll work on that. We already know how difficult PlayStation 3 is. But the worst thing is, like, PlayStation 3 has, you can get PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 classics on the PlayStation 3, but you can't necessarily get all those same games on the PlayStation 4. So they've got to figure out a way to have it all work together. But, as long as the next gen have good games, we'll also be happy. So... yeah. Unless you guys have anything else to add, we'll move on to our last topic.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so this week we decided to play a little game, and this kind of worked out well talking about all this next-gen stuff because we can talk about this game, which is I'm going to talk about 3 of Sony studios and what games that they could possibly be making in the upcoming console generation. Chunt, you were going to look at the Xbox studios and see what they could be doing. It's the 3 of them.
Yep.
And Jamie, you were just going to go third party, yeah? I didn't know if you wanted to just do Nintendo or you wanted to do a mixture. So I left it open
it's a
for
hybrid
you,
of the two.
Ooh. All right, so might go. We might go one studio at a time. So, Jamie, you start us off with the third parties, would you?
Nintendo, obviously not third party, but Nintendo. I think the obvious. I'm going to be so obvious here. They're working on a sequel. We know they're working on a sequel to Breath of the Wild, but I also think they're working on a sequel to something else Zelda. I think there's going to be a companion Zelda title to be coming out in the vein of the 2D Zelda kind of games. I think that's largely gone under the radar because everybody really wants Breath of the Wild 2 or whatever the hell they're going to call it, which I do too. I'm more bothered about that one. But I think there are multiple Zelda games in development at the moment. And just to throw another Nintendo one in there as well, I think Splatoon 3 is also in development. And whether that becomes we're hypothesizing here, by the way, that there is a new Nintendo console coming soon as well. There's a Switch Pro or a new variant of the Switch.
Ooh.
I think that might be a thing. So that covers off my Nintendo one, and I'll pass the buck to Chunt.
Well, I just want to have a quick question about that. So do you think with the success of Breath of the Wild, do you think they're literally going to start doing what they've been doing with Mario for years, which is if they think of a good game, they then slap the Mario aesthetic over it? Do you think they're going to start doing that with Zelda stuff? Or do you think it's just going to be...
So Zelda at the minute, it has two SKUs. It has a 3D role-playing RPG. You have your Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, Breath of the Wild type of Zelda game. But then it has the 2D kind of top-down perspective of the olden day Zelda games. It has, your Link's Awakening, stuff you play on your Game Boy. That type of an aesthetic. They're the two ways that it goes. And I think there's been a lot of attention on the Breath of the Wild sequel that, a sequel to a top-down Zelda game has been largely forgotten about because the platforms have merged, right? So that game would probably have come out on the 3DS, whereas, Breath of the Wild did come out on the Wii U. They were separate ecosystems, but now it's just one ecosystem in the Switch. I think it's probably fell by the wayside. But in terms of like slapping random Zelda shit on stuff, nah. They did that with the Hyrule Warriors game, which for all intents and purposes I think did quite well. It was quite well critically received. But I don't see them just going and haphazardly, doing Rabbids versus Link or something stupid like that. Not at all.
All right, Chant. Now you have a wide berth here of games that you can studios you can choose from, because we know a lot of the studios, but we don't necessarily know what they're working on. So what do you got first?
Yeah, so I've got one just obvious one because people just know it's coming. It's the worst kept secret. And then two other ones are kind of my maybe like my wants, but I think potential things that could be made real. I'll get the first one out of the way. Yeah, my wish list. The Fable reboot. Duh. Like it's coming. They just have to say it. Just confirm it and stop the vitriol going around. I can't wait for that. Playground. Like that's how it's been foretold in legend by this point.
It's a Fable.
Out of all studios, it's a Fable made by a in-house studio, whatever. All these other games studios that are under the Microsoft or Xbox Game Studios banner now, a lot of them you could probably just make calls on what they're doing because they're all there for a specific title, like Undead Games and 3 and the Coalition and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't go there because it's all kind of obvious stuff to expect. But the second one I want, and I think could be a legit thing.
Let's just go one at a time for now, and then
Playground Games, that's done. That's the first one, so I'm done there. We've talked about that at length, and everybody else has too. It's just obvious. But the second one will be has to be. It's a massive property that hasn't been touched really on a big deal since 2013 at launch, which is Killer Instinct. They have to be doing a Killer Instinct 2. Like that's a big game, and it was in Evo for like 3 or 4 years in a row. It hasn't been at Evo since 2017, but it's coming back this year. for 2020, which has caused a bit of a oh my god, like uproar kind of celebration among fans, because Killer Instinct is a beloved franchise, and what Double Helix did with that game was just amazing. Like, I remember playing that at launch, and I was like, "Shit, this is melting my face," and it's so good. And then when Iron Galaxy took over, when I think Amazon bought Double Helix, so they rolled over development to Iron Galaxy, who carried it on from there and did the season 2 and 3 content for it, and just expanded on the game. It became a game that I was like, God damn, I wish I was good at this. Like, you can play it, but if you want to feel like you actually know what you're doing, you have to know what you're doing on that game. And it's always been the one fighting game this gen where I'm like, God, I wish I knew what I was doing on it, because I love it. And the music is another thing with it, with like Mick Gordon, who's essentially, cut ties with Bethesda over what happened with Doom Eternal and his soundtrack. He's a free agent, and he did the soundtrack for the Killer Instinct 2013 as well. And when you go back knowing that, it's like, well, it's so obvious. Like, his signature is all over it. Like, when you play Doom and you listen to the Doom Eternal music, particularly Doom, and you go back and listen to the 2013 Killer Instinct, it's like, God damn, like, this is so good. And that explains why. So I can see that happening. It's such a big content IP that I don't know why they haven't capitalized on it yet. Yeah, it's had legs, but I think they should bring it back for next gen and make it look super pretty. Try not to muck with the gameplay too much, and just expand on the Killer Instinct lore and give it a story mode. A proper, like, put money in it, like what Mortal Kombat 11. That game is stunning. Like, I just watched the Aftermath expansion for Mortal Kombat 11, and the story mode for that game, as well as Injustice 2. Like, they set the bar, and if I can get a Killer Instinct like that, I just want it so badly. And next kind of ties into it, because one of the characters you can get in Killer Instinct was Rash from Battletoads, and everyone was like, oh wow, cool, because around that time you would see Battletoads spread out through different games. Like, there's a secret part in Shovel Knight that you can find the Battletoads and fight them and stuff, and you got Rash in Killer Instinct as well as a playable character, and he looks just like he popped out of the game, but modernized. Like, he looked like a cartoon kind of anthropomorphic frog, but realistic textures, and still his attacks all look like a cartoon character and stuff. So it was in line with it, and I was like, yeah, this is rad. But then when they announced the Battletoads new game that comes out, the art style was not what everybody was expecting. And even the fans were like, what? Like, the fans particularly, I should say, were like, what? That's not Battletoads. That's not what Battletoads looks like. And even me, I was like, yeah, all right. Yeah. All right. New Battletoads, cool, but not quite on board yet with the art style. But it is what it is. But they've been quiet, man. Yeah, we haven't heard anything from them since like the initial reveal and some gameplay at some convention or whatever. And that's I don't know how the actual studio is pronounced. It's either Dlala or is it Dlala? That's what the studio name is, and it's like working in tandem with Rare. So I wouldn't be surprised if we can expect a new reveal for Battletoads to come out, like, totally scrapping. Like, no offense, I'm sure that team was pretty passionate and loved the art style and were behind it, and Microsoft were probably behind it as well, and they're like, yeah, cool, go ahead with it. But obviously it hasn't hit, because nobody's talking about it, and most of the conversation at the time was the art style, not a fan, blah blah blah. And some people were saying the gameplay didn't feel right. So look, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a new reveal of a new Battletoads game. I want it. It's my wish list. If it doesn't happen, I'm not going to cry about it, but I want that to happen so bad. And you can have some cross promotion there with Killer Instinct. There's a lot of opportunity there, but those are my three. One is so obvious, and the other two are more kind of an obscure thing. They're both Killer Instinct would be second party. Like, if you think of Rise and Recore and Sunset Overdrive, they're all exclusives, but they're all under like the Xbox Global Publishing arm, and that's what Killer Instinct came out as well. And Battletoads
Microsoft pays for it. Someone else develops it.
Yeah, so but Battletoads is kind of similar. It's with Rare, but it's put off with another studio as well. So those are my things, because everything else we've talked about, and everybody knows what the other games are coming out. The game studios are all called respective names that relate to the games that they make, which is just so obvious. So I thought I'd go a bit obscure and maybe under the radar a little bit, so to speak. But yeah, that's me. Done. End of.
Well, so much for going one at a time, because Chunt just blew his load all over us. So we might just have to go one for one here, Jamie. Just before I go on with mine, Chunt, do you have any predictions of when those games would come out, if they were to come out? Like, how long has it been since some of these studios have made games?
2013 was the last time Killer Instinct. Well, that was when it launched, but it's had content, season 2 and 3 content, the following years after that. So say about 4 years ago or something was the last time something came out for it. And Battletoads, we haven't heard anything new for about a year or so. So yeah, I expect it to come back at some point. I think it's due for a redo.
All right, well, my first one, so going through the Sony studio lot, a lot of them are really obvious, so I'm going to stay away from, Naughty Dog is literally finishing Last of Us Part 2. Santa Monica, God of War will be God of War 2. Polyphony, Gran Turismo series, Insomniac, Spider-Man, and I know it's a prediction technically, but I think Ratchet and Clank is obvious. Ben Studio just did Days Gone. Media Molecule just did Dreams. Guerrilla will be doing Horizon 2. So I'm actually running out of studios really quickly to choose from with this one. So the first one is Japan Studio. So Japan Studio works in a strange way where they're largely used as like a supportive studio for second parties most of the time. So they have multiple teams, so they'll work with one developer for The Last Guardian and help develop it with them. I think they produced a game with From Software for Bloodborne. They worked with they developed the game alongside Bluepoint for the Shadow of the Colossus remake. So in the last 10 years, I think they've had like 15 games or something release that they're all involved in, but they've only released 2 games since 2013, and that is Knack 1 and Knack 2. So to move on from that, I looked it up. I think the first Knack shipped like 1 million units, and the second Knack sold not even 500,000. So I don't think Knack 3 is coming. That being said, I think we spoke about this a few weeks ago now, where I talked about how Sony's first party tend to diversify in terms of the type of age limit games that they have. So they'll have Knack and Ratchet and Clank for younger players. They'll have Uncharted and Horizon for your teens and whatnot, and then you can have your mature games like your Last of Us and your Bloodborns, right? So I think Japan Studio, knowing that they've also worked on games for VR like Astrobot, they're going to have some type of kid-friendly game come out at launch. Knack 2 came out in 2017, so I think they're going to have some type of new IP at launch. It's not going to be a huge game, but it's going to be in that vein. They're going to make another kid-friendly game, family-friendly game that they can sell at launch, so parents can buy their kids. So that's my first one. And Jamie, back to you. Oh, other way.
Yeah, throw the pace off there, Chunt.
Oh, sorry. When I start
excited.
going, I just go, man. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like a, what do you call it? One of those you're a Beyblade. You're a spinning top. Keeps going until he runs out of steam. Yeah, so I think that Atlas have been known to keep the Persona series PlayStation exclusive, but I think that there is a very, very good chance, other than Persona Q, that was a Nintendo thing. I think the next Persona game is in development, and I think it is multi-platform. I think it is going everywhere. I think Xbox will get it just as a bypass, but there's been a lot of call for Persona 5 Royal to go to Switch. I agree that game should be played in handheld. I want to lay in bed and play that for an hour or two, and I don't have to sit in front of a TV. It's just one of those JRPGs that you want to do that with. So yeah, I think Atlas as a studio in general will be trying to put a lot more of their franchises in different places, but Persona being the one that I think will, 1, be in development, 2, be going everywhere, and 3, Dan, you're going to ask me when I think that's going to be. I don't think we're looking at till 2024 at earliest, if not 25. Persona games take a long time.
They do, but one thing I do appreciate about Persona, like Persona 5 came out on the PlayStation 3 as well when it came out. Like they try and get it on what they're available to. I'm not fully aware of what their PlayStation deal is. Like clearly they have had one in place for a long time. Persona 4 Golden was beloved on the Vita at the time. Or was that the PSP? I can't remember.
We got Joker as a playable character in Smash as well. Smash Bros.
So I think when it comes out, it's going to come out to multiple devices. But yeah, I'm really curious about that deal, especially now that Yakuza has started going out to Xbox as well, which is all Sega as well. So I wonder what those deals are like. So my second pick. So I think Sony, unlike Microsoft, so Microsoft has gone on a spending tour to get in a lot of studios, ones that are already established. I think Sony is going to, so they've bought Insomniac. They might buy one other studio, but I think what they're going to mainly do is develop their studios they already have existing into multiple teams. They've tried this in the past. Naughty Dog at one stage had 2 teams. One team was working on The Last of Us while one worked on Uncharted 3, and then once Uncharted 3 stopped, they went, we don't like this, and then they all worked on The Last of Us at the end. Santa Monica used to have 2 teams. It's something that they've tried. For this one, I'm talking about San Diego. So right now, Sony San Diego mainly create the show, the baseball game, which we know that they're gearing up to release that game on Switch and Xbox in the future. So I think they're going to staff up, or if they haven't already, they're going to start employing more people. They're going to have people that are working on that game year in, year out, but they're going to start a secondary studio within, and they're going to work on an Uncharted game. It's not going to be with they're not going to make Uncharted games with Naughty Dog anymore. I think they're going to let Naughty Dog do whatever they want because their games just sell. But they'll, knowing where they are in San Diego, Sony's motion capture studio is in California, just up. I think it's in LA. Near where Naughty Dog are, near where Santa Monica are. So I think San Diego, they have that access to put in that quality. It will be weird because it's running on a different engine, so I'm curious as to how that engine will work on a game like Uncharted. But I think that's where they're going to move forward with it. It won't be a Nathan Drake story at all. That's done, but they'll either continue on with Chloe in another adventure or someone else. But they want to keep that franchise going, but they don't want to step on Naughty Dog's feet And to be honest, I reckon there is a possibility that this game is shown next week, to release in August next year. Is my prediction.
Quite specific.
Well, Lost Legacy came out in August in 2017, so it makes me think that next year, August. And if they've been staffing up, that would be my prediction. Jamie, final one.
Quantic Dream. I think Quantic Dream are obviously working on something after Detroit. It wouldn't surprise me if we still see it, maybe even next week. But it's not going to be an exclusive. I think David Cage himself came out. He said, "Look, from here on, like Sony have been a great partner, but we want our games in front of as many people as possible." We've seen that with the moving of literally their entire Sony back catalogue is now available on PC on both Steam and Epic. So great news for them, getting the game in front of more people. But what are they doing next? And I think it's going to be in the same vein. I think they're only going to grow the tech that they used in Beyond. I see it maybe going back to focusing around less central characters and being a bit more in the vein of a Beyond. And the reason I think that is because I think it's probably further along in development than we think. Your top pick what on earth David Cage wants to do next. I mean, Heavy Rain was kind of a Cluedo whodunit kind of murder vibes. Beyond was really supernatural, and then Detroit was very of the times in terms of the growth of androids and kind of how we treat different people, which is very pivotal this week. Treating everybody as equals, etc. Black Lives Matter. Just throw that in there. And where he goes next, I think I'd like to see them do something like Western. Do you know what I mean? Like a bit of a Western-y kind of vibe. Yeah. Like weave some tech into it if you want, but
change it up. 3.
Yeah, change it up and see where they can go. But 2023 again, I think you're looking at 24, 25 by the time this game gets made, because Detroit was 2018, right? And they've obviously worked on the port for PC, which would have taken a chunk of time, and they've also ported everything else to PC, which would have taken a chunk of time. That's all been done internally, to my knowledge anyway. I don't know if Dan, you've read any different, but I'm pretty sure Quantic did those ports themselves, so that'll have been tons of resources. But yes, Quantic Dream are my final pick, and I think mid-generation 24, 25, and it'll be everywhere.
Yeah, that's a really interesting pick because I think the porting the games to PC is something Sony's just starting to do because they published that game. I assume they have the rights. I don't think they tried to do. I remember Microsoft with Sunset Overdrive as a way to get Insomniac to make that game. They're like, we'll give you the we'll let you have the IP, because normally in these scenarios the publisher is the one that owns the IP. Like the Order 1886 that was made by Ready at Dawn, that is a Sony owned property, even though Ready at Dawn are a second party. But then Insomniac got bought, so now technically Sunset Overdrive now belongs to Sony. So I don't know I assume it's with Quantic Dream, Sony owns those properties, so I think that movement more on Sony's part. But what I kind of predict is that I think Quantic Dream have sort of outweighed, listen, we'll go find a publisher that we can put all our games on other platforms. We probably won't get as much money, but by putting it on more platforms, hopefully we can make more money back on the other end. So I'm curious as to who they will publish with. And I like things like Cage loves film, and eventually every person that says they love film ends up making some type of westerns. So that would actually be interesting. And also, if they do have a smaller budget, that probably makes them focus more on just one character rather than having all these multiple characters like they've done in Heavy Rain and Detroit. But that's a good pick. So my last one is actually wide open. So this is San Mateo. So San Mateo was only created last year, towards the end of last year, which was interesting because they also shut down a studio in London and opened up this San Mateo which is in San Francisco, I think, in the States. So this is wide open for me. So obviously they're new, so their game's not going to come out until well into this life cycle. But we spoke a few weeks ago, and I mentioned it before about, Sony trying to have diverse games. But the one thing that they don't have diversity in is most of their games are all third-person action games, whether they're open-world RPGs like Horizon or linear games like Uncharted or Last of Us. They're all the same type. And my prediction is that this San Mateo studio will create a first-person shooter, a new one. I do predict that there's some type of Resistance remaster or something coming, but I think that's going to be done by a second party. I don't think that'll be done internally. And yeah, I think it's going to be a first-person shooter. I think they're going to stay away from sci-fi. I don't think they want to try. Like, the worst thing about having the Killzone franchise and even the Resistance franchise is being these sci-fi shooters. They're compared to, at the time, like Halo, which is just never a good comparison to be put in when you're talking about first-person shooters. So I think they'll do something different, and they'll try and find a niche of their own, and try and not butt up against Call of Duty as well. So that's my final prediction. And yeah, is anyone else?
Sony don't really have their own, or they haven't used them in a while, like their own tentpole first-person shooter game.
So the last first-person shooter game was Killzone Shadowfall from Guerrilla. And PlayStation 3 era, Insomniac was making the Resistance games, and now they have purchased Insomniac, so they can bring that back if they want to. But I think they want Insomniac to make the stuff that they want to make, and I don't think they want to go back to a game that far gone. My prediction is someone like Blue Point could be working on a remaster, even though everyone wants Demon Souls. But my prediction is if they're working on Demon Souls, it means you're not getting a Bloodborne 2, and I think more people would want a Bloodborne 2 from Software rather than a remaster of Demon Souls. I think you get one or the other. I don't think you get both.
I've never understood the hype behind those games, man. The Souls games and that.
Neither do I.
Like, all right, I don't like punching myself in the nuts like at any time, and I don't want a game to punch me in the nuts all the time.
Yeah, but sadists do.
Yeah, true. They exist. Represent.
And they exist.
Tell us more, Jamie.
Huh?
Tell us more.
Definitely don't want anybody standing on my testicles, thanks. But different strokes for different folks, right?
Indeed,
that's right. All right, we'll finish up. Before we go, I want to give a shout out to Stewie's Retro Gaming, because he's commented on every one of our videos, I think, since we started. So shout out to Stewie. And Stewie. I love that we've been getting these comments so early into these podcasts. It's great. But yeah, so that's the wrap up for this week. Thank you for watching Let's Talk Games. Our handles are below us individually, and you can also see our Twitter and Mixer accounts above. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you again next week.
Goodbye.
Bye. Yeah.